Political candidates have a tendency to lose and never run for office again. A lot of times they think they don't have what it takes, they just didn't make the right moves, they didn't meet the right people, or in general they're discouraged by their experiences during the campaign and just give up and never run for office again. So this video is all about what to do after you lose your campaign. Now, losing your political race isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, of course, winning would have been better, and being publicly humiliated by having thousands of people announce that they don't like you or would prefer your opponent certainly does not help your ego or sense of self or your sense of identity or your self-confidence, or okay, it's kind of depressing. I mean, there's other ways to be publicly humiliated. It's not like you were flogged. That may have actually not been as bad. But anyway, so you've lost your campaign, but you've learned and gained a lot of new skills. The number one reason people win their campaigns is that they're able to move people, votes, and money better than everybody else. And they do that a variety of ways, by saying horrible things about you that aren't true, running really good campaigns, investing more money. There's a lot of reasons that you lost. You need to do an honest assessment of why that was. And you can do everything right and still lose, because sometimes people are just better organized or have better connections or are better at raising money, so they can do the advertising and mail that's required. So that's something to keep in mind too. Just because you didn't make it through doesn't mean you suck and are a total loser, although that's exactly how you feel right now. So let's look at the positive things that come out of running a campaign, spending this time that you spent on the campaign trail, and what you can do with that next. Over the course of the campaign, you have become a speaking master. If you've managed to get through the campaign and not had to talk in front of crowds like almost every day or small groups of people, then you aren't campaigning right, and maybe that's why you lost. But everybody else, you had to get over your fears, your nervousness about public speaking. You had to overcome your personal barriers, and then you had to learn to do it well. If you managed to learn to do it well during the course of the campaign, then good for you. But what I find is that it takes a lot of speaking to really get comfortable with it. Now that you're an excellent speaker, should you choose to run for public office again, you can get off on the right foot instead of sounding nervous for the first half of the campaign. Public speaking well only comes from experience. It only comes from having to respond to crazy questions from the audience and from your going door to door and having to talk to different kinds of people about different kinds of things. Over the course of being a public speaker, you've not only learned to speak, it's just learned to speak. You've also learned how to speak about issues that are really important, and hopefully how to do it in a way that connects with people. The next thing you learned was how to raise money. Learning to raise money can be a huge challenge, and it's a difficult hurdle. People are as nervous about calling people and asking them for money as they are about public speaking. So if you've overcome that and you've learned how to raise money, you've figured out how to set up your donation page, you've worked with the system, you filed campaign finance reports, you've got a head start on getting your next campaign going, and you've already got a base of donors that you can ask for money. And that's a great place to be at the end of the campaign, because they will have supported you. They'd have been disappointed that you're lost, but if you still ran a good campaign overall, they'll be glad to invest in you on the next campaign, which means you've already got a head start for the next one. You know how to connect with voters. You know how to go door to door. If throughout the campaign you knocked on doors and talked to voters, you learned how to talk to different kinds of people about different kinds of things, because you never always know what you're going to get between doors. Their neighbors are completely different. You've learned how to handle completely crazy people. I once knocked on a door where the woman wanted me to support an initiative to bring in the Marines and round up all the people and just eliminate everybody who didn't make enough money and wasn't educated enough to protect the Constitution. And I'm like, wouldn't the government use of force like that violate the Constitution? But that was an acceptable one-time thing. You never really know what kind of crazy you're gonna get when you go to knock on doors, and being able to handle that and have those conversations is really good. It's really good. And so you're off to a head start. You'll go back, if you go run for office again, you'll go back to those doors you knocked on before. You'll remember some of the voters, especially in a smaller community. And those people will be able to connect with you because now they've seen you again. They'll tell you they supported you or didn't support you in the last one, but maybe in this one, they will support you if they didn't before. You've most likely had your first newspaper interview and understand how that works. Most local newspaper reporters aren't like the major media reporters who are only out to destroy your life. Most local reporters will still be tough, but they're really fair. And so now that you've had an experience, you're ready to deal with the media and work with the media a little bit more the next time. You're better prepared to engage. You know which reporters that you need to talk to, and this is a really good thing. So the next time you decided to run for office, or even if you get involved doing public relations for another organization or help another candidate, you can already walk them through that process because you know how it works with first-person experience, and that means a lot. There tends to be some naivety when people get involved and start running for office or get on political campaigns. And so now that you've actually been involved in the process and you've gotten to know the people that are involved and you've gotten to see the issues firsthand, some of that naivety is gone, and that's a good thing. You've learned how many more opportunities there are to get involved besides just running for office. There's lots of things you can do. You can help other candidates, you can help local political groups, you can help your local party. There's a lot that you can do to get involved to make a difference, and now's the time to take advantage of your experience and to try to do that. If it was a contentious primary and there wasn't too much mudslinging and you're not still sore over the lies your opponent said about you, now may be a good time to help them on their campaign so that they can beat the other party in the next election. I think sometimes this can be the hardest part because local politics especially tends to be so petty that it's really difficult to approach someone who beat you in a primary and say, hey, how can I help you win, because the general election is going to be really tough. Sometimes you don't want to do that because they lied about you, and you probably shouldn't because that's not necessary to win. You can be honest and talk seriously in a political campaign without having to make up stories or whatnot. So if your opponent was really nasty, then I understand if you don't want to help them. But if by some chance somebody won fair and square and they just ran a better campaign than you should definitely get involved. But there's also other candidates who won their primaries who are going to need help, and you can use your experience and your connections from your campaign to help them to win, and you should. There's a level of naivety, I think I mentioned this before, but you also learn how the political parties tend to actually work, and there's an overestimation of how influential they are in most communities. So people think they have to go to the party and they have to do all these things, but now that you run for office, most scenarios you're going to learn that they're really not that effective. They aren't really in a position to help you or hurt you, and they are not at all what you thought they were. I always get phone calls from candidates upset because this county party endorsed their opponent because he gave them $15,000. That happened, I think it was in Northern Ohio. Just a few weeks ago, we had a candidate, he was running for Congress. He just gives the party $15,000 and he buys their endorsement. This is not unusual. This is politics. This is how it works. But whenever you're trying to wonder, would they really do something so unfair? The answer is yes, because people are rarely ideological on the political campaign. Whenever you are interacting with people and political figures, they're really about establishing their position so that they can climb the dominant hierarchy and have more influence, more power, more money, and so on. And so ideology is really just a tool to get people to vote. Very rarely do we meet people who actually are ideologues and are trying to do or stop something that's happening in government. What tends to happen on the political campaign when you start getting around political figures, when you start to get around the party especially, they're like the worst when it comes to this, then you find yourself having to deal with those kinds of people, and it can be very frustrating and discouraging. But if you know that going into it on the next campaign, you can better manage these various interests so that you can do what you want to do. And that is worth a lot in getting another campaign started or helping others through the campaign process. So now that you have lost, you have learned all of these things, and you are completely and totally ready to go on to the next step. You're completely ready to run again, help other candidates, or stay involved. But whatever you do, you have to stay involved. Don't just get mad and disappear like 90% of candidates who lose do. They lose, you never hear from them again, and so on. So figure out why you lost, do a breakdown, try to understand it, and then try to be better and stay involved. And that's what I hope you learn from your campaign loss.